It started with a flicker, a tiny, nagging spark that refused to fade. I'd been married to Elena for 12 years, and I thought I knew her like the back of my hand, her quiet hums while cooking, the way she'd twist her hair when lost in thought. But lately, something was off. She'd slip out of the house with vague excuses, meeting a friend, running errands, in return with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was paranoid, that love doesn't curdle into suspicion without reason. But then I found it, a receipt, crumpled in her coat pocket, for a hotel I'd never heard of. A hotel we'd never been to together. My heart thudded, loud, insistent, like a drumbeat warning of war. I confronted her that night, my voice steady but my hands trembling. "Where were you today, Elena?" She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound, and said it was nothing, just a mix-up, a gift for me she'd been planning. Her eyes darted away, though, and that flicker in my chest roared into a flame. I didn't believe her. I couldn't. So, I did what any man desperate for truth would do. I bought a GPS tracker, small and sleek, and hid it in her car the next morning. It felt wrong, dirty even, but I needed to know. I had to know. That first day, I watched the little dot on my phone screen zigzag through town, innocent enough, until it stopped. A hotel. Not the one from the receipt, but another, tucked away on the edge of the city. My stomach twisted, tight, painful, like a fist clenching inside me. I drove there, hands gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, and parked just far enough to see without being seen. And there she was, my Elena, stepping out of her car, her hair catching the sunlight, laughing as she met him. A man I'd never seen before, tall and smug, his arm sliding around her waist like it belonged there. My world tilted, sharp, sudden, and I knew. This was no mistake. This was betrayal. I sat there, frozen in my car, watching them disappear into the hotel, Elena and that stranger, that thief of my life. The air felt thick, suffocating, like I was drowning in the truth I'd chased. I wanted to storm in, to scream, to demand answers, but something colder took root instead. A plan. I need to know more, to gather every shard of this betrayal before I struck. So, I waited, heart pounding, palms slick with sweat, until they emerged 2 hours later. She kissed him, quick, casual, like it was nothing, and I snapped a photo with my phone, the click of the shutter louder than my ragged breaths. That night, she came home humming, as if the world hadn't just cracked open beneath me. "Good day," I asked, my voice a tight wire, and she nodded, oblivious, chattering about some nonsense I didn't hear. I nodded back, a marionette playing my part, while inside I was burning, raging at how easily she lied. The GPS tracker became my shadow after that. For weeks, I followed its trail. Hotels, cafes, a park on the edge of town where they'd sit too close, laughing like I didn't exist. Each time, I filmed them, grainy clips from a distance, my hands shaking but my resolve hardening. I wasn't just gathering evidence for me anymore. No, I had a target now, him. The idea hit me one sleepless night, staring at the ceiling while Elena slept beside me, peaceful, untouched by guilt. What if I sent the videos to his world? What if I shattered his life like he'd shattered mine? I dug online, piecing together who he was. Mark Delaney, a real estate agent with a slick website and a smug grin. Married, too, with a wife who posted sunny family photos on social media. Perfect. Cruelty bloomed in me then, sharp, icy, like a blade I couldn't wait to wield. I'd make him pay. I'd make them both pay. The footage piled up, hours of it, stored on my laptop like a secret arsenal. Elena laughing at his jokes, brushing his arm, Mark leaning in, whispering something that made her eyes light up. Each clip carved deeper into me, painful, raw, until I couldn't feel the hurt anymore, just the cold steel of purpose. I'd catch myself staring at her over breakfast, her smile still so familiar, and wonder how she hid it so well. How she could pour my coffee and kiss my cheek while her heart belonged somewhere else. It was maddening, unreal, like living with a ghost wearing my wife's face. One evening, I slipped. She was late, again, and I was pacing, the GPS stopped blinking at yet another hotel. When she walked in, hair slightly mussed, I snapped. "Where were you, Elena?" My voice cracked, sharp, accusing, and she froze, eyes wide. "Work ran late," she said, too quick, too smooth. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound, and her face tightened. "You're acting strange," she muttered, turning away, but I saw it, the flicker of fear. She knew I suspected something. I backed off, mumbling an apology, but the game had shifted. She was on edge now, and I was ready to push harder. That night, I found Mark's wife online, Clara Delaney, her profile brimming with pride. 10 years with my soulmate. A photo of them grinning at a beach, her blonde hair windblown, his arm around her. My chest tightened. Jealousy, maybe, or just the sting of irony. She didn't know. She deserved to. I started editing the videos, clipping them into a brutal montage. Elena and Mark, hotel after hotel, undeniable. I'd send it to Clara, anonymously, of course, let her feel the same gut punch I had. It wasn't enough to confront Elena yet. No, I wanted them all to unravel first. The glow of my laptop screen was the only light in the room that night, casting sharp shadows across the walls as I hunched over my work, my mission. The montage was nearly complete, a relentless sequence of betrayal, each frame a dagger I'd sharpened with care. Elena's laugh as Mark opened a hotel door for her, click. Their hands brushing as they walked through the park, click. The way she tilted her head toward him, a gesture I'd once thought was mine alone, click. I stitched it all together with cold precision, my fingers steady now, no longer trembling. The hurt had hardened into something else, something dark, something unstoppable. I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was a hunter. I leaned back in my chair, the clock ticking past midnight, and replayed the video. 2 minutes and 17 seconds of undeniable truth. No words, no narration, just the raw, silent evidence of their deceit. My chest tightened as I watched, not with pain this time, but with a strange, bitter satisfaction. This wasn't about saving my marriage anymore. Elena had killed that long before I'd known it. This was about justice. Revenge. I'd send it to Clara Delaney. Let her see the man she'd built her life around for what he really was. And then I'd watch it all burn. Finding Clara's email wasn't hard. Her social media was an open book, posts about bake sales, family vacations, a life so bright it almost hurt to look at. I created a burner account, anonymous and untraceable, and typed a simple subject line. You deserve to know. My finger hovered over the send button, hesitant, just for a moment. What if she didn't believe it? What if she confronted Mark, and he spun some lie to keep her tethered? No. The footage was too clear, too damning. I clicked send, and the whoosh of the email echoed in the quiet room like a gunshot. It was done. The next morning, Elena was quieter than usual, sipping her coffee, eyes darting to me and away again. I kept my tone light, casual, asking about her day ahead, but my mind was elsewhere, racing, calculating. Had Clara opened the email yet? Was she staring at her own screen right now, her world tilting like mine had? I went to work, a mechanic shop where the hum of engines usually drowned out my thoughts, but not today. Every clank of a wrench felt like a countdown. By noon, I couldn't resist. I checked Clara's social media from my phone. Nothing new. No cryptic posts, no signs of chaos. Yet, that evening, Elena didn't come home on time. The GPS tracker showed her car at a hotel, again, but this time, I didn't follow. I waited, sipping a beer in the dark, the house silent except for the hum of the fridge. When she finally walked in, hair mussed, cheeks flushed, I didn't ask where she'd been. I just watched her, my silence heavier than any accusation. She mumbled something about traffic and disappeared upstairs, leaving me alone with my thoughts. That's when my phone buzzed, an X notification. Clara had posted, "Sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who hurt you deepest." Taking time to think. My pulse quickened, sharp, electric. It had begun. The next few days were a blur of tension. Elena grew jumpy, snapping at me over nothing, her phone glued to her hand like a lifeline. I kept my routine steady, played the oblivious husband, but inside I was coiled tight, waiting for the next ripple. It came on Friday. I'd taken the day off, claiming a headache, and was home alone when the doorbell rang. Jarring, unexpected. I opened it to find a woman standing there, blonde, petite, eyes red-rimmed and fierce. Clara Delaney. My breath caught, sharp, sudden, like I'd been punched. She didn't know who I was, not yet, but I knew her instantly. "Are you Elena's husband?" Her voice was low, trembling with rage, and something else, grief, maybe. I nodded, slow, my mind racing to catch up. How had she found me? "I got a video," she said, holding up her phone like it was a weapon. "I know what they've been doing, Mark and your wife." I tracked her here from the hotel names in the footage. Her eyes searched mine, desperate, demanding. "Did you send it?" I could have lied, should have, maybe, but the truth slipped out, cold and flat. Yes. She stared at me, long, hard, then let out a shaky laugh, bitter and broken. Good. I thought I was crazy, you know? He denied it, lied to my face, but I knew. She paused, swallowing hard. What are you going to do about it? The question hung there, heavy, loaded, like a challenge I hadn't prepared for. I'd planned to ruin Mark, to expose Elena, but Clara standing there, raw and real, threw me off balance. I don't know yet, I admitted, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. She nodded, like she understood, then turned to leave, but not before dropping a bombshell. Mark's on his way here. He knows I came. Be ready. The door clicked shut behind her, and I stood there stunned, reeling as her words sank in. Mark was coming. Here. To my house. The hunter had become the hunted, and I hadn't seen it coming. My plan, clean, controlled, had spiraled into something messy, unpredictable. I glanced at the clock. Elena would be home soon, too, if the tracker was right. The pieces were converging fast, chaotic, and I had no time to think. I grabbed my phone, my keys, and the hard drive with the footage, shoving them into a bag. If Mark wanted a confrontation, he'd get one, but on my terms. I drove to the hotel where Elena's car was parked, my mind a storm of what-ifs. What if Mark got there first? What if Elena saw Clara's post and bolted? What if this whole thing exploded beyond my control? I parked across the street, just as I had that first day, and waited, breath shallow, hands clenched. Minutes ticked by slow, agonizing, until I saw him. Mark, striding out of the hotel, his face twisted with anger. Elena followed, pale, frantic, grabbing his arm, pleading. He shook her off, climbed into his car, and peeled out, heading, I guessed, toward my house. I could have followed him, could have faced him there, but something stopped me. Elena stood alone in the parking lot, staring after him, her shoulders slumped. For the first time since this began, I saw her, really saw her, not as the enemy, not as the liar, but as a woman caught in her own wreckage. My anger faltered, just for a second, and I wondered if I'd gone too far. But then she turned, climbed into her car, and drove off, and the cold resolve snapped back. This wasn't over. Not yet. The hotel parking lot was empty now, save for the faint hum of streetlights and the echo of Elena's tires fading into the night. I sat in my car, engine off, lights dim, watching the spot where she'd stood. Her silhouette burned into my mind like a photograph I couldn't unsee. That slump in her shoulders, that fleeting crack in her armor, it tugged at something deep, something I'd buried under layers of rage. Pity? Regret? I shook it off, hard, fast, like shaking water from my hands. She'd made her choices. Mark had made his. And I'd made mine. There was no turning back now, not with the pieces falling into place so violently, so perfectly. My phone buzzed, sharp, insistent, snapping me out of the haze. A text from an unknown number. Meet me. Corner of 5th and Pine. Now. My pulse spiked electric, wary. Clara? Mark? Someone else caught in this web? I hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen, then typed back. Who is this? No reply. The silence stretched, taut, unnerving, and I cursed under my breath. It could be a trap. It could be nothing. But I'd come too far to ignore it. I started the car, the engine growling to life, and headed toward the intersection, 5th and Pine, a quiet corner near downtown, far enough from home to feel like neutral ground. The drive was a blur, streetlight streaking past, my mind racing faster than the car. I kept replaying Clara's visit, her red-rimmed eyes, her trembling voice, the way she'd said, be ready, like a warning I hadn't fully grasped. Mark was coming to my house, or so she'd said. But what if he wasn't? What if he'd gone somewhere else? What if Elena had called him after their fight, and they were plotting together right now? Doubt gnawed at me sharp, relentless, but I pushed it down. I'd know soon enough. I reached the corner, dark, deserted, save for a single figure leaning against a lamppost. Clara. Her blonde hair caught the light, her arms crossed tight across her chest. I pulled over, slow, cautious, and stepped out, the night air cool against my skin. You texted. I asked, keeping my distance. She nodded, sharp, jerky, and stepped closer, her eyes glinting with something fierce, anger, maybe, or determination. Mark's losing it, she said, her voice low but steady. He knows someone sent me that video. He thinks it's you. He saw Elena's car at your place once, dropped her off. He's headed there now, and he's not calm. My stomach dropped, cold, heavy, like a stone sinking into deep water. Why tell me? I asked, suspicion creeping in. She could be playing me, setting me up. But her laugh, short, bitter, cut through that thought. Because I want him to hurt, she said, her voice cracking. Like I did when I watched that video. Like you did when you filmed it. We're in this together now, whether we like it or not. Her words hit me, hard, unexpected, and I saw it then, the same cold fire burning in her that burned in me. Allies, not by choice, but by circumstance. I didn't have time to process it. How long ago did he leave? I demanded, already moving back to my car. 10 minutes, she said, following me. Maybe less. He's driving fast, too fast. 10 minutes. He could already be at my house, waiting, raging, or worse, he could have caught Elena on her way back. I slid into the driver's seat, keys jangling, heart pounding, and Clara grabbed the passenger door before I could stop her. I'm coming, she said, climbing in. You don't get to argue. I stared at her stunned, irritated, but there was no time to fight. I peeled out, tires squealing against the pavement, and headed home. The streets blurred again, faster this time, reckless, as Clara filled the silence with jagged pieces of her story. I confronted him after the video, she said, staring out the window. He lied, said it was a client, a misunderstanding. But I knew his lies. 10 years teaches you that. I packed a bag, left the kids with my mom, and tracked Elena down. I needed to see her face. Her voice wavered, soft, broken, then hardened again. Then I found you. I didn't respond, couldn't, my focus locked on the road, on the ticking clock in my head. Mark at my house. Elena may be there too. A collision I'd set in motion, now spinning beyond my control. We reached my street, quiet, suburban, deceptively calm, and I saw it. Mark's car, a sleek black sedan, parked crooked across my driveway. Lights blazed in the house, too many, too bright, and the front door hung open, swaying slightly in the breeze. My breath caught, sharp, shallow, as I slammed on the brakes. Clara cursed under her breath, soft, fierce, and we both stepped out, the air thick with tension, electric, dangerous. Stay here, I told her, but she ignored me, following close, her steps quick and determined. The living room was chaos, chairs overturned, a lamp shattered on the floor. Mark stood in the center, tall, wild-eyed, his fist clenched, his face flushed with fury. Elena was there too, cornered against the wall, her eyes wide with panic. You, Mark roared, spinning toward me as I stepped inside. You sent it, didn't you? You ruined everything. His voice cracked, raw, unhinged, and he lunged, swinging a fist I barely dodged. Clara shouted, sharp, commanding, stop it, Mark. And he froze, mid-step, his gaze snapping to her like he'd been slapped. What are you doing here? He spat, his chest heaving. This is your fault too? Clara stepped forward, fearless, blazing, her voice steady as steel. No, Mark. This is yours. You did this, to me, to him, to her. She pointed at Elena, who flinched, small, fragile, like a bird caught in a storm. Mark's eyes darted between us. Me, Clara, Elena, confusion warring with rage. You don't understand, he started, but I cut him off, cold, final. I understand enough. I saw it all, filmed it all. The room went silent, heavy, suffocating, as the weight of that sank in. Elena whimpered, soft, broken, and slid down the wall, burying her face in her hands. Mark's shoulders slumped, defeated, maybe, but his eyes still burned, locked on mine. What now? He asked, his voice a rasp. I didn't answer, not yet, because I didn't know. The plan had been revenge, clean, calculated. But this? This was messy, human, real. Clara touched my arm, light, steadying, and I realized we weren't done. Not by a long shot. The air in the living room crackled, tense, brittle, like a storm about to break. Mark's question hung there, what now? And I felt the weight of it pressing down, demanding an answer I didn't have. Elena's sobs were the only sound, soft, jagged, cutting through the silence like shards of glass. Clara's hand lingered on my arm, warm, grounding, and I glanced at her, her eyes steady despite the chaos. Mark shifted, restless, cornered, his gaze darting between us like a trapped animal. You think you've won? He snarled, voice low and venomous. You've got nothing. I laughed, cold, hollow, a sound that startled even me. I've got everything, I said, stepping closer, my voice steady now. Every hotel. Every lie. On video. His face twisted, rage, fear, and he lunged again, but Clara moved faster, grabbing a vase from the table and smashing it at his feet. The crash exploded through the room, sharp, shocking, and he stumbled back, stunned. Enough, she shouted, her voice a whip. You don't get to play victim here. Elena looked up, tears streaking her face, eyes pleading. I didn't mean for this, she whispered, barely audible. It just happened. My chest tightened, anger surging. But before I could speak, the doorbell rang shrill, insistent. We froze, 4 statues in a rec room, until Clara moved, peering through the window. Police, she said, her voice flat. My heart jolted, wild, confused. Who called them? The officers stepped in, 2 of them, stern-faced, surveying the mess. We got a disturbance call, one said, eyes narrowing at Mark. Neighbor saw a car blocking the drive, heard shouting. Mark tensed, ready to bolt. But Clara spoke first, calm and deliberate. He broke in. Attacked us. It wasn't entirely true, but close enough. The cops cuffed him, his protests loud, futile, as Elena stared, mute and trembling. I watched them take him away, a strange emptiness settling over me. Revenge tasted less sweet than I'd imagined. Mark's car disappeared with the police lights, red and blue fading into the night, and the house fell silent, save for Elena's ragged breathing. Clara turned to me, eyes searching, uncertain. You okay? She asked, softer now. I nodded, automatic, numb, though I wasn't sure. The plan had worked, Mark exposed, humiliated, but the victory felt hollow. Elena stood slow, shaky, her voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry. 2 words, small, inadequate, and I felt them like a slap. Sorry. I echoed, my voice rising sharp, incredulous. You tore us apart, Elena. For what? She flinched, shrinking back, but didn't answer, her silence louder than any excuse. Clara stepped between us, gentle, firm. Not now, she said, her hand on my shoulder. She's not worth it. The truth of that stung deep, raw, but I let it sink in, turning away. Later, alone in the kitchen, I poured a drink, whiskey burning my throat, as the day replayed in my mind. The cops had taken my statement, Clara's too, corroborating the break-in. Mark faced charges, trespassing, assault, and I wondered if Clara would press more, if she'd divorce him. My phone buzzed, a text from her. He's out on bail tomorrow. Watch yourself. My grip tightened, anger flaring anew. This wasn't over. That night, I found Elena packing, quiet, methodical, stuffing clothes into a suitcase. Where are you going? I asked, voice flat. She paused, back to me, then said, away. I can't stay. I didn't stop her, didn't beg. The door clicked shut behind her, and the house felt bigger, emptier than ever before. Days blurred into a gray haze. Work, sleep, silence. Elena was gone, her absence a ghost in every room, and I avoided the footage, the hard drive locked away like a Pandora's box. Then Clara called, her voice brisk, urgent. Meet me. Coffee shop on Elm. Now. No explanation, just a command I couldn't ignore. I went curious, wary, finding her at a corner table, her face set with purpose. He's planning something, she said, sliding a folder across the table, photos, texts, a blurry screenshot of Mark meeting a man I didn't recognize. He's out, and he's furious. Thinks you've got more dirt on him. My stomach twisted, cold, tight. I don't, I said, but she shook her head, firm, insistent. Doesn't matter. He's paranoid, hired someone to dig into you. The revelation hit, sharp, surreal. I'd been the hunter, now the prey. Why help me? I asked, searching her face. She leaned in, eyes fierce. Because he broke us both. I'm not letting him win. Her resolve mirrored mine, unexpected, electric, and I nodded, slow, grateful. We were a team now, bound by betrayal, forged in revenge. We strategized, quick, quiet, deciding to turn the tables. I'd leak more footage, audio this time, snippets I'd recorded, while Clara fed Mark false leads through a friend. A dangerous game, but thrilling too. As I left, she grabbed my hand, brief, steadying. We'll get through this, she said. I believed her. The plan moved fast, ruthless, precise. I dug up old recordings, Mark's voice, smug and careless, bragging to Elena about dodging Clara, and sent them anonymously to his boss, his clients. Clara planted rumors, subtle, damning, hinting at financial scams he'd never committed. Within days, his life crumbled, job gone, reputation shredded, his rage boiling over in frantic calls I ignored. Then he showed up, at my shop this time, wild-eyed, disheveled. You're dead, he hissed, lunging across the counter. I sidestepped, calm, cold, grabbing a wrench as coworkers pulled him back. You did this to yourself, I said, voice steady. He screamed, unhinged, powerless, as security dragged him out. I smiled, small, bitter, knowing we'd won. Clara texted later, triumphant. He's done. Filed for divorce today. Relief washed over me, warm, fleeting, followed by exhaustion. Elena surfaced too, a voicemail, tearful, begging forgiveness. I deleted it, unmoved, finished. The past was ash now, scattered, gone. Months passed, quiet, healing. Clara and I met sometimes. Coffee, not war, our bond shifting into something softer, undefined. Mark vanished, rumors said he'd left town, broken. Elena sent letters, apologies I never read, until they stopped. The house felt mine again, empty but free. One morning, Clara called, voice light. Breakfast? We ate, laughing, easy, sunlight spilling across the table. No revenge, no plans, just two people, scarred but standing. I looked at her, really looked, and felt something stir. Hope, maybe. The story wasn't over, just rewritten.